Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. Where only the strongest roots see the light, brought to you by 𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗏 Candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, please subscribe to the channel and like and share this video. Coming out with a video today about one of our most popular videos pre-podcast, and we want to delve that much more deeper into her, is Orisha Aje, the Orisha and goddess of wealth. Something that a lot of people, or pretty much everybody, is thinking about right now is economics, right? How can we spiritually align ourselves in a way to be getting as much money and as much progress as possible? What do you think about this topic, Phil?
I'm very interested in this one because this is before I came along.
Yep.
And, you know, we always want to wonder, you know, about money and spirituality. So I think that this is definitely something that is going to be interesting for me because I'm going to learn a lot here too. And hopefully those who are watching are going to learn a lot as well.
Orisha Aje is a great deity, and I have this concept, and it was taught to me by one of my mentors, that every human being needs 4 deities if you practice Ifa, and at least, and this is not taking into account Eshu and Orumila, which are a given, but you need your Ori icon, your 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗏, right, which is to help harmonize you with nature and your head and the debts that you have specifically with your destiny and the extension of God that lives within your brain. Another one is a 𝗃𝗃𝗿𝗏, which is the Orisha of the ancestors, and it is to align us with them to be able to open things up for us and spiritually stabilize and organize ourselves here on earth. Another one is going to be 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, which is the icon or initiation that we go through to be able to align ourselves with our divine and celestial twin. Because every time we take a step here, someone takes that same step in heaven. And the last deity is going to be this one, Orisha Aje. And why does everybody need Aje? Is because everybody needs money, right? Life is not possible without currency. If we look at the Odu of 𝗃𝗶𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏, which is, at least within the Lukumi context, where this Orisha came down from heaven, it speaks of a time when the barter system was being utilized, right? And in the beginning, it was fine. You know, you give me a knife, I give you a chicken. But what happened is people started having different needs, and not everybody who had the need had the material the person who could provide wanted. So they went for divination because this was causing a lot of feud and a lot of strife within the community. And the Odu 𝗃𝗶𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏 was revealed, where offerings had to be made to be able to bring down a deity that was going to resolve all of their problems. Well, the offerings included a couple different things: boiled eggs, shrimp, 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗏𝗏𝗏, or the small bananas, the really sweet ones, different types of desserts, and they also made offerings with like white animals, right? And when all of these were in place, the skies opened up and a deity started descending from heaven, and it was composed of cowrie shells, right? And this deity was Orisha Aje. As soon as she arrived, they covered her with offerings, they made the sacrifices necessary, and she blessed them with one of her cowrie shells, which ended up becoming the, you know, basically ancient currency of what is Africa. You know, these are things that are even recognized outside of our own culture, where other cultures within Africa utilize the cowrie shell. And the root cause is ultimately the story within this Odu. Once people had the cowrie shell and were instructed by Aje to use this as a form of trade or to be able to interchange certain key elements, you know, it immediately caught fire, where, you know, the cowrie shell became the currency of, you know, basically prehistoric Africa. And it brought a lot of peace and progress to, you know, all of the different manifestations it has now, whether it's a coin, whether it's a dollar bill. The only thing was, it was very difficult to regulate the cowrie shell because you can just get a cowrie on the ocean, as opposed to it being institutionalized and regulated by, I don't know, the Fed. But, you know, right from the very beginning, we're seeing the influence that this deity had, where, you know, God Almighty even said we need money, you know, to be able to keep the peace. Because if I have a service, but I don't want what you have, that way we're able to still go after our goals and get our wants without being frustrated and having to do things we don't want to do. So that was the first story, and that's in the Odu 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗃𝗃 or 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗃𝗃.
So is this Orisha one that is like not well known as much, or?
Well, here's the thing. It's known, but I remember when I was first learning about this deity, and the first person to really put that information in my hands was my godfather Pedro. And I was able to recognize that within the Lukumi tradition, there were a bunch of like minor deities that I realized were all parts of this greater deity known as Aje. So, for example, within the Lukumi paperwork, I'd see Aje Saluga. I'd see Aye with a Y instead of a J. I'd see Orisha of Money, which means wealth. Or I'd see a bunch, and when I would look at the materials, I'm like, these are all the same thing, you know? So what happened in the Afro-Cuban Lukumi Ifa is that there were so many different ways of giving, and to be honest with you, even in Africa, there's so many different ways to give this deity. It can get a little confusing, especially when it's transported to the new world and we're trying to figure out who we are once again. What I was able to analyze is that all of these deities are part of one central deity. So what I did was I analyzed the way my godfather gave me the ceremony. And then when I actually was getting ready to receive Orisha Aje, my mentor 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗲 had received it from a traditional standpoint, and he explained it to me. And I realized that, to be frank with you, the Orisha Aje that's given in the 𝘃𝗂𝗂𝗍 context is the one that really garnered the most belief out of me, or faith. Now, mind you, there were certain things that I noticed it was missing as well, but as far as the ceremony in whole, I said, you know, this is a framework I can work with and really get the best out of it. So what I did was I looked at what was missing from each of them and, you know, filled in the blanks, because one thing we can notice, especially with certain ceremonies such as this, is that there are missing pieces. Like, why isn't there a song for this here, but, you know, in this tradition they have it? Or why isn't there this animal incorporated here, but in this one they do? And that's why when I give a deity, I make sure I incorporate everything so that the day after tomorrow, the person isn't missing anything, right? So, but yeah, it is a deity that in Africa really never went anywhere. But the problem is when it came to the New World, it was so distorted. I know people that received every manifestation of it. They received Aje Saluga, Orisha Aye, Ola, and I'm like, man, you spent 5 to 6 times the money for the same thing. You basically receive the same thing 6 times. So
how do you spell it again? So I'm
very, very simple. Aje.
Oh.
Yeah, it's Orisha Aje. Kind of like Orisha. His real name is actually 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗏, which makes reference to the farmland. So, you know, Aje in itself is the deity. And the word Aje is interesting in itself because it means shell. First and foremost, and it's also an ire. It's a blessing that can come in a consultation. Like someone could come ire Aje, right? Which is a blessing of wealth, money, overall betterment. Because when you have money, usually things tend to get overall better, right? Money tends to make certain or most things better. It can't make you happy, but it might be able to buy you something that makes you happy or facilitate a process that makes you happy, right? What makes me happy? You know, giving a gift to my daughter, taking my wife out to dinner. Without the money, I can't do any of these things. I can't even hop the bus. Yeah. So, you know, it became very, very apparent very quickly money is necessary. And, you know, where you see this as well is in the Odu, there's 2 Odus specifically that speak of why money is so imperative. And ultimately, whenever we talk about money within the literature of Ifa, we're referring to this deity, right? In the Odu of Ogunda Masa was where Orumila was very lonely. And, you know, he realized that he had friends, but they would disappear. When he had negative situations, no one was ever there for them. And he wanted some clarity as to why he was always being abandoned. So when he performed divination, the Odu of Ogunda Asa was revealed, where Ifa told him to make do with what he had and make offerings to Orisha Aje. So the only thing he had on him was money. And when he went to buy the materials to be able to offer to Orisha Aje, he said, "What can you tell me?" She said, "Your best friend is money, because the $20 you have in your pocket will never betray you or abandon you until you betray them."
Oh.
And he was like, "Well, what do you mean betray them?" He said, "Well, when you spend them on something, they don't get angry, you know?" And he was like, "Wow." So she said, "Marry me. I'll never betray you. I'm here. And at least I'll never leave you in a way where I won't come back. And in the Odu of Ogunda Masa was where Oromila realized his best friend, or anybody's best friend, is the $20 they have in their pocket, or however much they may have, you know. It makes reference to the necessity of this deity, and that, if we don't have friends, have money. As cold as that may sound, but anybody that's delved into adulthood knows that there's these periods of solitude, especially in our early 20s or possibly early 30s, where you learn this valuable skill of how to be alone. And the easiest way to be alone is surrounded by economy, because it allows you to still be able to accomplish things without having those, that human support that ideally we find later with a partner and things of that nature. And then when we look at the Odu of 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗁, Olodumare wanted to perform an experiment to see how much people loved him, right? And the experiment was going to be that he was going to give a speech and then throw material into the crowd to see whether they would pay attention to him or the material. And the material was the cowrie shell, right, or money. So when Olodumare was giving the speech, Ogun, who was assisting him and bodyguarding him at the time, took a fistful of cowrie shells and just started throwing them all over the place, and people started losing their minds to the point where they almost trampled Olodumare, and Ogun had to save him.
Oh no.
Yeah, so when Olodumare was trying to get their attention and things like that, they weren't even paying attention to him. So at that moment, he looked at his son Ogun and he said, people love money more than they love me. And it was a real shock factor for him, but he realized that, now for people to be able to get to me, they have to go through Orisha Aje, or through money. That's why to be able to get spiritual wellness and betterment, you have to pay. Whether you go to church and put money in a basket, whether you visit the 𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗁 and put the money on the 𝗃𝗃𝗃, or whatever, you cannot find God any way other than through money. And that's a really ironic part for some people, is that, even salvation costs, and Africa is no different, and that's why, now mind you, there is abuse, there is exploitation. I'm not advocating for that, but what I am saying is everybody has the right to, charge what they see fit based on the lifestyle they desire. And, if people are willing to pay it, I mean, who is anybody to debate? So even Olodumare said, I have a cost, so even getting to heaven isn't free, Phil.
Oh man.
Yeah. So,
I'm cutting that clip.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, man. Oh man. We get some backlash sometimes.
Just blame me. Don't blame him.
I tell you, but Orisha Aje, I mean, when we actually look at this concept, the most popular and well-known story about her is going to be in the Odu of Obe Ogunda, or Obe Yonu, right? And what happened here is Aje was known as Iyawo, or Iya Ile Iwo, right? Which means woman or mother from the town of Iwo land. And her father, the king, was desperately trying to get her married, because he's like, I need heirs. I need a male counterpart in here. So he started inviting certain men to be able to come court her. One of those men was Ogun. And when he started dating her, it started off fine, but Aje was an intolerable woman. She was very, 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 very difficult to deal with. And, she would do things to men on purpose to get rid of them, especially when she wasn't attracted to them or didn't like them. But she really didn't like anybody. So, what she would do is, like, for example, when Ogun was trying to date her, she tried to poison his food. When Osang tried to date her, she did something completely taboo for him. One of the reasons he doesn't want to be around women either was because of Aje. But then, a gentleman named Orumila was going to come and present himself based on the king's invitation, being that he had a chieftaincy of Ifa and he was well respected within, the community. But he had heard rumors about this woman and said, I need to go a little bit prepared, because, if I'm going to do this, I don't want to fail either. He performed divination. The Odu of Obe Ogunda was revealed, where Ifa instructed him to do the 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗁 of Suru, which is the 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗁 of patience. He had nothing else to do other than be absolutely painstakingly and divinely patient with this woman. And he said, wow, this should be easy, right? And when he went there, he was introduced, and Aje started with her nonsense. She would call him names. She tried to poison him multiple times. And all he would say is, that's okay. That's fine. Or he wouldn't respond at all. Now, mind you, this one was like, oh, this guy's trying to play hardball with me. He thinks he's going to survive. And what she did was she took him she asked to meet his mother. And 𝗏𝗲𝗍 said, my mother has passed on, but if you want, we could visit her grave, to bless our marriage. And she was like, yeah, please do. So when they got to the grave site, she pulled her pants down and she defecated on his mother's grave to make him angry and insult him.
Whoa.
And 𝗏𝗲𝗍 at that moment had never felt that much anger in his whole life. He literally was blinded by it, but he remembered the advice from his own Odu that said, patience. And he took a moment and he looked at her and he said, that's fine, honey. At that moment, Aje had an epiphany. She said, if this man is willing to tolerate me desecrating his mother's tomb, I will never find another man like this. I need to get it together.
Whoa, okay.
And what she did was she transformed all of the defecation, excrement, and vomit into money. And she said, I want to apologize. I've never met a man like you. I want to marry you because I don't think anybody else is going to tolerate me. And just as compensation, this is our wedding gift, our dowry. And I want to make you king. And he kind of looked, and that's why they say patience makes kings. 𝗀𝗏𝗍𝗶𝗲, which means, the patience will make a king. It will birth a king. And, when the king of 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏 heard that, Aje had accepted 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗲's marriage proposal, he spared no expense in the wedding, and she became known as 𝗃𝗏𝗹 or 𝗃𝗏𝗹𝗁𝗍𝗏. And that's why the people who initiate into Ifa and Orisha, they're known as 𝗃𝗏𝗹s, right? And it's from or in commemoration of Orisha Aje because she would wear all white, right? And some people say her father was 𝗏𝗲𝗏. And what happened is from that day forward, we're all called 𝗃𝗏𝗹 because we enter into this covenant with said deity. Even though 𝗃𝗏𝗹 is more of a feminine term, all of us marry this deity to a certain degree. So it became a blanket term, and that's why we wear white. And we go through so much difficulties during our year in white because Aje, the deity of Aje, is radiating us to see how we're going to react to the adversity and obstacles that we go through. I've said it many times. My worst year, well, there's two really low points in my life. One was my year in white. It was very, very, very strenuous. And then the other one was when my grandmother died, right? But I wasn't in white. But I would say, they're tied, but my year in white was pretty horrible. But you overcome, you get through it, you have patience. And this is what 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗏 or 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗏 is trying to teach us. But this is the deity that, actually aids people through their year in white to be able to get the blessings that come afterwards. It just comes with a lot of turmoil,
Wow.
Yeah. She's intense. She's awesome though. I actually gave one last week. And, the good thing about Aje is it's a deity that you can actually receive before doing Orisha or Ifa. It's very entry level. One thing I love to incorporate when I give it is actually 𝘄cie 𝗂𝗍𝗁. Now, this 𝘄cie, I've gotten many questions on it. It is an 𝘄cie that is confectioned out of wood. It's usually 𝘄cie kneeling or something like that. He has this long head going backwards where another head is on the back. And then he's covered in cowrie shells, right? This is the 𝘄cie that actually came down from heaven with Orisha Aje. Some people say maybe even in Oyekunpelekana. Now, mind you, this 𝘄cie went through the same identity crisis that Aje went through, where, 𝘄cie 𝗂𝗁𝗍𝗏 became 𝘄cie Aje, 𝘄cie 𝗂𝗏, 𝘄cie 𝗀𝗏. All of them ultimately go back to this original context of 𝘄cie 𝗂𝗁𝗍𝗏. So if you look at like the 𝘄cie Aje that's given in the Afro-Cuban context, even though it's actually mounted in a shell and it's not made out of wood, it is from that central energy root of 𝘄cie 𝗂𝗁𝗍𝗏, because all of those 𝘄cies have to do with money and progress. So that's where all those concepts come from. So, when we look at the relationship between, 𝘄cie and Aje, it really goes back to, the Odu Ogunnaobe or Ogunnabeḍe, Now, this story sometimes is found in 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶 as well. It kind of jumps back and forth. I've always mentioned 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶 and 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗍 is one pair of odus, omoiyas, that really share a lot of patakis. And what happened here was Aje had a lot of money. She was a very prosperous woman. And 𝘀𝗀 was bitter that she had denied his marriage request and also tried to kill him. And she was minding her own business. She was a married woman now. She was doing her own thing. And 𝘀𝗀 actually kidnapped her and ate her, right?
What?
So mind you, now that there's no money on Earth and Orula's wife is missing, like they're like, we need to figure out what's going on. When they performed divination, the Odu 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗍 was revealed, where Orunmila was recommended to perform sacrifice to 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 to have him aid him on this rescue mission. And when 𝘃𝗶𝗏 kind of started delving, and looking back, he realized that the last time Aje had been seen was around 𝘀𝗀 or near the jungle. So 𝘃𝗶𝗏 knew all of 𝘀𝗀's taboos, and one of them, or a couple of them, was corn, guinea pepper. And not that these are his taboos. This is actually what he enjoyed to eat, but his big taboo was actually tobacco or the cigar leaf, right? And what happened is they concocted a plan to get close to 𝘀𝗀 and trick him into eating this, thus causing him to throw Aje up, right? And return her back to, where she was meant to be. That's why in this Odu, when people smoke cigars on an empty stomach, they want to throw up. Like tobacco is a natural, like regurgitative motivator. It makes you want to hurl. Oh. So when we look at this story of 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗍, it speaks again of the necessity of this deity. Without it, things were in turmoil, things were in strife. It also is why some people become jealous of others over money. 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗍, it speaks of why we need to avoid the envy that is based on economics, because ultimately it didn't work out well for 𝘀𝗀. He just lost a lot of prestige based on his actions. So,
wow.
It's also where someone was first kidnapped for money, by the way.
So like ransom?
Yep. 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗍 is the Odu of the ransom, definitely, because the first person that was held ransom was Aje.
Man, so any thoughts about like the lottery when it comes to Aje? Like, do you have to like, I don't know, pray to Aje to?
I mean, it helps.
Want to win the lottery or something like that?
The thing is like the lottery is in two Odus specifically that I can recall right now. One is in the Odu of 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗏 Alara or 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗏, and the other one is in the Odu 𝗀𝗏𝗏 or 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏. They're the same sign backwards. They're omoiyas as they're known. And what happened is this story is pretty, shared between both of them. When these Odus come out, the first thing everybody talks about is the lottery, because there was a very famous gentleman named Juan Angulo, a very famous Babalao who was 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗏, a very well-respected guy. They say he won the lottery 3 times in a row. Some people would say he fixed the lottery 3 times in a row.
Jeez.
But he won it in Cuba, and he won a lot of money back then. When $50,000 was like 500 or $1 million. I don't know. But, this is an Odu that speaks heavily about the lottery. Now, the lesson that Ifa always tries to teach people is that the lottery isn't just money. That's why Aje is known as an overall betterment of things, because Orisha Aje tends to bless people with the wealth and economics that they most need. Maybe you need a wonderful partner. Maybe you're looking for childbirth. Maybe you're looking to procreate. Maybe you need a better position. Maybe you do have a business. For Orisha Aje is an obligatory energy and deity for all business owners and entrepreneurs or people trying to scale up economically. But in the Odu of 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗏, it speaks of when the person needed a come up, basically. And, they were very pessimistic, and, Ifa had identified that to be able to change their situation completely, they needed to perform sacrifice or receive Orisha Aje, right? Now, when they did this, Aje recommended that, they play the lotto, which they ultimately won under Aje's influence, right? The Odu Oturarico speaks a little bit differently, where the person played the lotto but just got an amazing partner, and they were actually angry about it. They're like, we wanted money. What they didn't realize was that the partner they had was Orisha Aje, and through love and companionship, they were able to have all the money they ever wanted. So you see 2 very different lessons being taught here. One, some people can win the lotto, but that's not always beneficial. Like the Odu Oturache says the person won the lotto, and when they went to pick up the bag of money, they broke their back and fell in a hole. you know. So it says the money was for your funeral. Don't ask for money, ask for prospects, ask for opportunities, ask for happiness, you know. Aje is a constant reminder that to be able to become wealthy has nothing to do with, you know, going after money. You know, when you look at these tycoons, these moguls, these people who have achieved this ridiculous amount of wealth, they were never focused on money. Obviously they had needs, but when you look at like a guy like Steve Jobs cared less about money. He couldn't have cared about money. He was focused on his technology and his discipline and his innovations. And, you know, Bill Gates the same way. Like, you know, I'll be frank with you. The people, some of the most humblest people I've ever met are uberly wealthy, disgustingly wealthy. And to be frank with you, there's a big difference between wealth and being rich. I've noticed that people who are rich are actually very frustrated and very angry. And, you know, Aje speaks of all of these things. The greatest way to call Aje is with humility. It's with patience. Aje, based on the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗍 and that story, says that the quickest way to make no money is by trying to make all the money at once.
Ooh.
You know, I mean, when we look at those concepts, if all you're focused on is money, 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 I mean, you're not going to make it because you're going to remove all the nuances that it takes to really create and garner that wealth. For example, if someone comes into our store and I'm just trying to be sleazy and be like, yeah, you need this candle. Yeah, you need this herb because, you know, that person's going to come back or you're going to kill this person, like all this other nonsense. You know, I might get them for $200, but they may never come back again because they didn't get their results or they realized they were taken advantage of. You know, I come from sales to a certain degree, you know, whether it was hospitality or I was in sales. My philosophy was always passive, you know, identifying what it is that the person needs and then putting the best options in front of them. And if people are going to buy something, they're going to buy it. And these are all the lessons that this deity tries to teach us, you know. But it all stems from good character, all of it. So,
is there any certain characteristics that can you be initiated in this?
Yeah, actually, that's a great point that you bring up. The Aje is beautiful in that regard, and the ceremony is beautiful. I just consecrate the icon. I don't initiate people into the priesthood of Aje, so you know there's no confusion. But in Nigeria, still to this day, I'm not sure if in Brazil, because Orisha Aje in Brazil as well is very, very, very popular. But in Nigeria, till this day, you can initiate as a priest or priestess of Aje, right? And, you know, you can see like the head priestess of Aje or the head priest of Aje, they're covered in cowries. Their Aje icon is monstrous. You know, it's really beautiful. You see them dressed in white. They do ceremonies at the ocean and the bodies of water. Because Aje within nature, you know, is actually the suds or the bubbles on top of the ocean water. Right. There's a saying that says Aje Olokun omobibinu Olokuni. Oh, I'm sorry. Aje Olokun seniade omobibinu Olokuni, which basically is stating that Aje is the daughter or child that was born from within Olokun, right? And you know, Olokun was Aje's parent or father, and she was actually the preferred daughter. So he gave her certain resources and accolades and opportunities that the other ones weren't able to. So she was actually identified to be the administrator of his wealth. So where does Aje get all of the wealth from? She obviously gets it from her father, Olokun. So Aje was kind of the first financial advisor. She was kind of the first financial consultant because she would advise her father who to provide the wealth to. I mean, you know, when you look at the deity like Olokun, everyone loves to talk about, oh, it's great for health, it's great for stability, all these other things. Olokun is amazing for prosperity, you know. So I usually, you know, if someone receives Aje, I recommend that they receive Olokun eventually. But if they have Olokun, I definitely recommend they receive Aje. And I'd love it if the person ideally, you know, somehow received them around the same time or at least had the goals to. Because when those two deities are next to each other, they work really ideally. Another interesting fact about Aje is that Aje is Orumila's preferred wife, to be frank with you. He loved Oshun very much, but, you know, some people would say he was married to Aje even before Oshun came around. So, you know, your Aje icon, usually you see a lot of Awalaos, they have it right next to their Ifa icon. Like there's certain deities that can live next to Ifa. Ori lives next to Ifa, Aje lives next to Ifa, and, you know, depending on the type of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗄 lives next to Ifa, like 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗄 Alaje, etc. But Aje was present for all these things. Another really interesting story about Aje actually is, I believe, in the 𝗀𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗲, right? And what occurred is that Orunmila would make money, but the money would leave, you know. It's an Odu that says why money isn't loyal, per se. You know, it's with me today, it's with you tomorrow, you know, it comes back, it goes. It's a toxic relationship, you know.
What do you have to say about people who say that, like, money is like the root of all evil?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, it caused them to trample God. You know, I think, well, here's the thing, right? When you look at certain really heinous people, right, that I won't even mention, but a serial killer, someone who's a predator, abusive, their motivations aren't money. I really don't think that. Maybe the cause of what they did ultimately was rooted in money. Maybe their parents didn't have the money to be able to provide for them or to treat them well enough, and it caused them to create this behavior or pathology. But really heinous, horrible people, I don't think their motivation is money. I think it's power, to be frank with you. You know, you look at a lot of the analysis that's been done on people who've done horrible things, you realize it was about control. You know, I think even now, from a political aspect, a lot of the people who make certain decisions in any government, I don't think it's money, because money they have. I think it's power and influence and, you know, a whole bunch of other themes. But as far as it being the root of all evil, I think money reveals the evil within people. You know, I think you know who someone really is when you give them everything. When someone has $1 million, you know, because a lot of, you know, how do I say this? I knew people back home that, you know, when we were, you know, marginal and we didn't have a lot, you know, they were the most humblest, nicest people you could ever be around. They were a joy to be around, but they got a little fame, they got a little money. You know, I'm not mad at people changing, but, you know, don't change for the worse, you know, and maybe they never changed at all. Maybe that's who they were the whole time. It's just when people are needy or have requirements, you know, they tend to be a little more polite to see what they can get out of you, you know. So Aje is the great revealer of character. She doesn't like to be profaned around. She doesn't like improperness. Like, she's a very strict, you know, to the point lady. I mean, she is actually one of the deities. Like, I remember when I received her, I was told, you want to do business with her, you want to negotiate with her. And I really don't. You know, I just make offerings. She knows my needs. I mentioned my wants, maybe not, but I never try to do business with a deity like this. Like, deities like her, deities like 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗶, deities like Oshun, deities like 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁. These are deities or Ogun is, I would never recommend that. You know, like, these are deities that you just offer to and you hope for. You know, we did a recent interview where a brother said, the Orishas don't work for you. The Orishas are not a magic wand. You want to make offerings. They know your needs. They know why you're there. I mean, your Ori is interacting with them, so they already know what's in your mind. You just need to go with the flow and the process, because I've seen a lot of people do it. They'll make a promise that they don't end up fulfilling for whatever reason, and then catastrophic things happen. I mean, this lady was like the first bookie. She's going to collect, you know, so okay. It's not something I would delve into.
Okay, no, that's interesting. That actually makes me think of another question that is different from what we're talking about, but you know how people just only pray and stuff when they need something?
Yeah, I've met people like that, sure.
What's it like with the Orishas? Like, because it doesn't seem sincere to me when people do that.
It isn't. I mean, you have some people that, you know, even though they come only when they have an issue, there is sincerity sometimes in certain people. You have people that generate sincerity from going through a process and being wowed by the results. But you do have people that just come when they need things. I mean, as far as how the Orishas react, they react like parents. You know, unfortunately, some people have to interact with their children on that basis. I mean, no one knows their kids better than them. So, I mean, you know, hey, Dad, I love you, this, that, and the third. Haven't been around in a couple of years. Yeah, I'm $100,000 in debt. You know, I forgot what movie it was that me and Erica watched one time where the kid was just such a screw up, right? And the dad, you know, he kept helping him until he started compromising his grandson's situation. And the dad was like, I've had enough of you, you know, and he took in the grandson and everything. But, you know, it's like any parent, you know what I'm saying? Everybody has their limit. And even the Orishas have their limit, you know. It's like, I mean, to be frank with you, I have clients from all walks of life, like people that are doing everything, and I have some that aren't conventional, people that are doing things that might be deemed undesirable. And I never want anything ever said to me concretely, but when I ask them, do you shine shoes, and they say yes, I make it very clear that doesn't work here. If you're trying to persist upon that, now if you're trying to stop and reinvest and reorganize your life to do something constructive and be a positive, aspect of society, you're more than welcome to be a part of the spiritual house. But people that aren't living within that which is socially acceptable really don't have any room with us, because that's just a headache in a situation that is not necessary. You have other people in spiritual establishments who love that. They're like, oh, you're doing something left, like we want you here, because there's a lot of capital and things that come with that. But in the long run, Orisha turns their back on you, and Aje turns their back on people like that. You know what I'm saying? And, the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁 𝗪𝗟𝗍 says that the money that we make from Ifa and Orisha to a certain degree is cursed. You know what I'm saying? Because ideally we wouldn't have to be charging for any of these miraculous services that we provide. But we live in a world where we do have necessities. So therefore it's a balance. You cannot exploit people. You cannot overindulge. You have to put it towards a constructive means, rather than just, taking, set amount of dollars and buying a pair of Jordans with somebody's sacrifice, or, going to the club, or all these different things. You can't spend this kind of money on that. You have to really allocate it correctly, because the Orishas will turn their back on you.
Do people really question like your prices for stuff? Like, why should this ceremony cost this much?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. I mean, it's business at the end of the day. I mean, when we look at, and you look at the story of, I think it was Ofun Meji that I just mentioned, where God said, to get to me, you have to go through Aje, or it costs money to find God. It does. There's not one religion that doesn't ask for a donation or have a stipend associated with it. So the fact that people ask doesn't offend me at all, because at the end of the day, it's a purchase, regardless of God or not. This is business. Now, mind you, we at Botanica Candles and More, we consider ourselves a really premier establishment. We provide the best services. I mean, the ceremonies that we take people through are the most complete and the most coherent that I've encountered. So, we're in a little bit of a different bracket than most establishments. So sometimes people hear our numbers and be a little bit astonished. Well, that guy over there does mano orula for $500 or $800, whatever it is. And, I tell them you should probably go receive it with him. And
I do that too.
And they're really shocked by that. Like, you're sending me away? I said, no. I'm sending you because you're a numbers oriented person. You're focused on quantity rather than quality. What you have to really analyze is if Joseph's over here with this number and then said brother's over here with this one, I mean, you could tell the difference maybe between a $10 bottle of wine and a $50 bottle of wine. But you can't really tell much of a difference probably between a $50 bottle of wine and a $125 bottle of wine. Mm-hmm. But what you need to analyze is, why is there such a huge price gap? Where has the fat been cut to be able to provide this excellent rate with this dubious quality possibly? So that's why, Orisha Aje is a deity that teaches us, know your value. Know what you provide. We're very blessed here. I mean, the Botanica really provides for all our needs. My spiritual practice is strictly based on vocation, and my wife is a real estate professional. So, it's really, what comes is what comes. And when we do it at a pace to where we're able to maintain that quality, that's one thing that's indebatable, is the quality we provide. Now, the price point, I mean, that's only debatable. I mean, but from establishment to establishment.
There's it's Aje?
Aje.
Aje. Is that color scheme?
Absolutely. The color that is associated with Aje is white. Why is this? In the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁 𝗪𝗏𝗍, which is where 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗏 married Aje off to 𝘊𝗵𝗏, it was where he covered her in the white cloth to be able to marry her off, right? So that's why wedding dresses are white. That's in the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗍. That's why women dress in white on their wedding day, because 𝗿𝗲𝗍𝗃 gifted his daughter Aje the white cloth for her to be married off as a symbol of purity, innocence, virginity, etc. Now, mind you, there's another version of that story where Aje started making a lot of money, and her father 𝗿𝗲𝗍, I love him to death. He was wonderful, but 𝗿𝗲𝗍 had some really big character flaws, and one of them was money. He was all about the dollar. And he was willing to do whatever it took. I mean, in the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗍 was where he stole his godson's Orisha money to be able to go gamble it all.
Oh, no.
So, he had a vice. He had a very big vice when it came to the numbers. And, one day he realized his daughter was making more money than him, and he felt a type of way about it. And he ran down on her and said, what about me? And she said, well, what do you have to offer? He said, well, you've liked this white dress. She said, all right, but I don't just want the dress, I want the color. He said, I can't share the color with you. White is mine. She said, well, the money is mine. And 𝗿𝗲𝗍 starting to fiend for it. He said, I'll give you whatever you want. So just like that, Orisha Aje was identified with the color white, like her father 𝗿𝗲𝗍. And then apart from that, it says that when people see money, they get blinded. That's in the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗍. When people see money, they get blinded, or you were blinded by money or blinded by success. And most people would think with blindness about the color black or the absence of light. The initial phases of blindness are actually a blinding white light. So that's why, the color white is associated with Aje, because they say that's the same color that people see when they see money. You get blinded by it. So you get blinded by Aje or the Orisha covered in white, or you actually get blinded by money. And all of that is in the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗍, where the people became blinded by funds. I mean, to the point where they trampled God for it. They didn't see nothing. Like, there's some people in some situations where they see the dollar and they don't see anybody in between. So, if you come in between them and their goals, it's just, you're done.
So would you consider some people who are like workaholics, would that be something like a quality for Aje or somebody else?
That's a huge taboo. Ifa says, as far as the children of Aje, I don't see that being a common trait. I mean, I noticed that the more people work, the less they have. It's kind of like the concept of, kind of like when you're exercising and whatnot. If you work out biceps every day, your biceps are not going to grow. You're not going to get stronger. There has to be rest, right? So the same thing is with our profession. The same thing is with however we make money. The more we do, the less we're going to have. And that's really scary for some people to be able to accept, because the human mind is like, more. I got to do more. I got to feel like I'm doing something. Well, the ironic part is, even when you exercise, you might not feel the trauma you're inflicting on your muscle fibers, but it's still happening. Wait till tomorrow. Wait till a week from now. There's workouts that I've done where, I worked out and I didn't feel that pain until 3 days later. And when it hit, I was like, oh God. So the same concept is applicable to life in Ifa and Orisha, because you might be working so hard on something right now, and you've done all that you can for this project this week. Rather than trying to overindulge in this, even though you can't do anything else humanly possible, work on something else. And you might see those results. So with Aje, it's the same thing. The reason Aje is the Orisha of patience is because making money and progressing and becoming successful takes patience. No matter how much, for example, you can have somebody right now that maybe wants to invest in real estate, right? They have $1 million ready to go, straight liquid, straight investing, cash, ready to go. You might be in a market where, honestly, it doesn't make much of a difference for you to invest $500K to the $1 million. So rather than spending that extra $500K on something that's not going to make a difference, reallocate it towards something else. But what Aje helps us from, or keeps us from falling into, is this overambition of feeling more is more when it's really not. You have to know when you've done more than enough and stop. So with working, it's the same thing. Aje is actually not a fan of that. Like, for example, and this is what I mean. Let's say you go to Aje, right? Aje, I want this house. Here's this huge offering of bananas and all the things that she likes. And the next day you're like, oh, Aje, the house isn't here yet. Here's some more bananas. Here's this. And you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you're not seeing any results. And I've had people do this, and they'll come to me and be like, Baba, I take care of my Orisha every day, and nothing's getting here any faster. So I'm like, why are you taking care of him every day? What else do you do every day? I sleep every day. Oh, wow. Have you tried sleeping? Have you tried giving it a rest? Have you tried giving it a break? And Aje is not really motivated by the more you give her. She's going to give you what you're meant for, regardless of how much you give her when she wants to. Now, mind you, giving her some is going to help that. But just giving, expecting her to kind of reciprocate is actually just going to annoy her. So this is a very temperamental deity. You know, it's like a courtship process. You know, if I give this girl flowers, maybe she'll text me back. But, you know, if I send like this huge teddy bear on the second date, she might get overstimulated and never look at me again. So it's one of those things where you got to really feel. It's not a conventional deity. It's not like Eshu, give me my red palm oil, give me my rat fish and corn, give me some rum, a cigar, and some water, and a candle, and we're good. Aje is very temperamental. She switches it up on us.
Okay, well, looks like we're running out of time here.
Just like that.
Just like that. It's like almost we planned it.
Guys, we got any shout-outs?
Of course we do, brother.
Yes.
All right, folks. If you want to be a member, it's really simple. Just that button right under us that says join. We have 3 separate tiers that offer 3 different levels of perks. It could be discounts on merchandise or completely separate episodes and live shows.
Ashe.
So let's give a shout out to, we got 𝘃𝗵𝗍 VIP.
Shady.
𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗏.
Thank you, Juju.
The Ramirez Dynasty.
Shout out to the Ramirez.
And a couple of super fans. We got Mama Magical.
Oh, yeah.
And Dr. Valerie 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗄.
Yes, the doctor is in the house. Guys, 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗂𝗋𝗆𝑐𝑎𝑛DLESandMore.com is up and running for all your services and product needs. If you're unable to watch us, the podcast is available on all major platforms for your listening enjoyment. 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗂 is a real estate professional. If you're trying to find a way to buy or sell a home within this very interesting market, it can be done. Give her a call. Greatly appreciative of all of the progress that we made from 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗂𝗋𝗆𝗻, Our Roots Podcast, Joseph Baba Ifa. Until next time, guys, see the light.